All right, my name is Sarah Kozian, and this is my presentation for Module 4. Out of Chapter 4, I chose dress and appearance as my topic. It has been something that's come up a lot, especially at the new school that I'm at. I'm in my second year at a new school, and it's a conversation that I've actually had with students quite a bit, asking about why do we have a dress code, what's the point of a dress code, why am I not allowed to wear what I want? So I actually found it very interesting when I read through Chapter 4 and thought that this would be a good presentation to create and then to maybe sometime share with my peers. Dress as a form of free expression. I wanted to start off with the law behind dress code and exactly why dress in itself is actually a form of expression. Students are free to wear what they want as long as it stays within the as long as it stays and is not disruptive to the learning environment. In reading through the book, it said that that student expression is protected by the First Amendment and that dress is often a part of this. It can be used to express cultural views, personal opinions, personal viewpoints, but that it needs to make sure that it stays within reason for the educational environment. Also, that the Supreme Court has often stayed away from school dress as a First Amendment right, that more often than not it's left to the state courts to determine. So I was actually kind of surprised when I read that, but that is how dress is a form of free speech. And next I'm going to talk about how that free speech can be done respectfully within the classroom. Okay. Dress code, why? Why do we regulate what our students wear? If what they wear is a right, and if what they wear is a part of their rights described in the First Amendment, then why do we even have a dress code? For the most part, dress has been considered a part of the First Amendment, but also it must be within reason. It must be something that does not disrupt the educational process or make other students feel uncomfortable. So that's one major reason why we have a dress code. How that dress code is determined, though, is very important and can be different from district to district. How can we create a dress code that minimizes disruption but also protects student rights? I think that the first thing to do would be determine exactly what parts of the dress code need to be are going to be considered the most disruptive. And it's been a little different in every district that I've ever been in. There's been different criteria depending on what's common and what's usually accepted in the community, what's usually a problem. The dress codes usually seem to change from year to year, depending on, just like I said, what had become an issue and what had not. If a student is expressing themselves within a reasonable manner, though, and that's not causing disruption, it can't really be considered a part of breaking the dress code. So in creating the dress code, administrators and teachers and staff and parents, whoever's working together, they have to be really careful about making sure that the dress code is protecting student rights at the same time that it's helping minimize disruptions in the classroom. One of the big things that I kept reading over and over again was that that everyone would have to make sure that the dress code does not focus on current fashion trends or personal student taste. Those things can't be considered a part of the dress code unless those things are causing disruptions in the classroom. Okay, now what kind of dress is considered disruptive? This is a big question I always get from my students about dress code violations. You know, why is this hurting anyone? Why am I hurting anyone by wearing this? So I was really excited to read this and get the opportunity to look at it and actually have an answer and maybe be able to put it into one of 4 categories. The first is that student dress cannot cause safety concerns. The second is health concerns. The third, and the by far the biggest problem that I've seen, is dress that sometimes calls undue attention to a student's body or anatomy. And last, dress that has ideas or slogans that might cause disruptions to a normal school day. That's a big definition in itself as well. The first one, safety concerns. Some examples that I've seen before, and that I also read about in the book, were in an area like a science lab or a wood shop, long hair not being tied back, loose clothing, long jewelry, open-toed shoes is a big one for me. I'm a science teacher, so we have a lot of dress code issues with when we go into the laboratory with dissection, making sure that students have the things that they need on them to be safe. Also in chemistry, that's a huge one. Making sure that students wear eye protection. I always give my students the opportunity, if they don't like the goggles or the eye protection that we wear in class, that they're more than welcome to bring their own from home. Some students don't like the goggles, but they are required to wear them. And lastly, proper dress during physical education. I actually asked our PE teacher a question about that, and I was kind of wondering, well, how would that be unsafe? And she talked to me about making sure you wear the proper shoes, why students aren't allowed to run in flip-flops or high heels or anything other than tennis shoes. We talked about how there are some major safety concerns with that as well, which is one that I had never thought of. The next, health concerns. This is more just issues with general student dress and maybe like personal hygiene. Examples that I saw in the book and that I've seen before are parasites like lice, fungus. I've had a lot of students with ringworm where we had to send a student home because of their dress or how they kept themselves. That would have made it contagious to other students. So an overall issue with cleanliness in a person's dress. With their hair, their skin. I've had students who we've sent home before with body odor. Just kind of something that was, it had gotten to a point where it was really starting to disrupt the educational environment for that student and also for the students around them. Community standards. This one is by far the biggest issue that I have with dress code, and it's also the most vague. It was the most difficult for me to kind of to define when I was going through this. So student dress must meet standards set by community. That's what one of the things that the book said, and it's very, very, very general. I live in a very, very diverse community, teach in a very diverse community. The definitions of appropriate dress between the different cultures in my community are very different. So this one's kind of been a tough one for me to explain to my students. The first one, and always in every school I've been in, is drawing attention to student body and anatomy, wearing low-cut blouses or things that don't really fit what the definition of the dress code is. When I looked through our dress code, actually, it didn't seem like the definition of this was set very well, and I think that may be a big part of why students and parents are so confused. And it hasn't been enforced very regularly between schools, so that may be one thing for us to work on, to look at this reasoning and how that fits into our dress code and how we can use it to better define our dress code in the future. Last one was controversial ideas or pictures. Always an issue. Every year, every school I've been in, schools can write a dress code that includes parts to explain how vulgar language or images and anything that might be culturally insensitive can't be displayed on clothing or on a person's dress during the year. One problem that I've run into in the past was a student who had a tattoo that had a vulgar language or image, and it was difficult to cover up. So the student actually had to go through great lengths to make sure that part, because that was technically a part of his dress, it wasn't just his clothing, it was actually what's on his body. It was very kind of interesting to watch my administration go through that. It was a tough one. What can we regulate? What we can regulate for students is any kind of dress that's going to disrupt learning process for that individual or for the students around them. If the administration feels that it's stopping the learning process or hindering it in any way, shape, or form, they can, add that to the dress code or send the student home, talk to the parents about making sure that that's not worn again. But we need to make sure this is done in a respectful and ethical manner. I think one of our biggest problems with enforcing the dress code right now is that sometimes teachers don't discuss the issues with students in a very respectful and calm manner, and you know, remind with empathy that that might not be the best thing to wear to school. A lot of our students, unfortunately, don't have a lot of choices in clothing at home, so sometimes they do wear things that are inappropriate, but not always because they're trying to fight the dress code. So I think a big thing for my school specifically will be talking to my teachers about how I can make sure that we do that in a way that helps the student and helps us to move forward in a positive manner. All right, last, how can we make sure we protect student rights while we're still keeping the classroom environment? The first one would be we need to involve a lot of different people in the creation of the dress code. I think that involving parents, involving teachers, involving students in it might be very helpful and might help to clarify the information. And to make sure that we're really being careful about only looking at dress that's disruptive, making sure that we're not looking at any kind of dress that might represent something cultural or a student's right to express their viewpoints or their ideas. I think that that's very, very important, and I think kind of leaving that up to the administration, allowing the teachers to send students maybe to the administration and giving them the opportunity for the administration to make that decision, not so much the teacher, would be very, very beneficial for us in our school. And that is my presentation about school dress code.